I want to ask you something honestly. When you pray about money, about your income, about your business, your financial situation, do you actually expect something to change? Not do you believe God can change it, but do you expect that the specific act of praying about it will produce a different outcome than not praying about it? Because if you're like most Christians I know, if you're like I was at one point, the answer is complicated. You believe prayer works in theory, but when it comes to money specifically, prayer feels more like you're reporting your financial situation to God than actually changing anything. You say the words, you mean them, and then you go back to doing exactly what you were doing before, hoping that somehow something might shift. And I want to show you today that you've been leaving some of the most powerful parts of prayer completely unused. Not the faith or the belief part, the mechanism, the specific neurological and spiritual mechanism that God embedded in prayer that makes it work. That is not only communication with God, but a transformation of the mind that produces different actions that would produce different outcomes in your life. And I don't mean this in theory. I went from $50,000 a year to over $50,000 a month. And I can trace the specific financial breakthroughs from 200-acre land purchase, from a business launch that outperformed every previous business, to 100K months, $20,000 days, to specific prayer practices that I want to walk you through today. And this isn't about believing harder, but it's about praying differently. And the difference is more specific than I think you've ever been taught that it is. Now, before I go further, I want to address something. I'm not talking about a blab it and grab it, name it and claim it, God died so we could all drive Lamborghinis, prosperity gospel. And I'm not saying God is a vending machine or a Santa Claus and the right prayer sequence is going to get you the money. What I am saying is that prayer works genuinely on your brain, on your perception, on your decisions and your actions in ways that most people never learn to access and don't understand. And when you understand the mechanism and you stop praying accidentally and you start praying intentionally, that everything will change for you. Now, the first method, and I don't want you to roll your eyes at it because I promise you haven't heard it like this before. The first method is gratitude. Now, you don't understand because gratitude is not just about saying things that you're thankful for, because this sounds familiar, but you are not doing it in the way that I'm about to describe it. Gratitude prayer unlocks something that most people have never had access to. Because here's what most people do. They open with, Lord, I thank you for, and then they list a few things and they move on to the real prayer, the requests, the needs, the problems that they want God to solve. Gratitude is the warm up. It's the throat clearing before the main event. But this is what neuroscience shows us that actually changes when you're not in a list check of gratitude, but a genuine state of gratitude. It's that your brain has two primary operating modes. There's threat mode, where it's scanning for danger, for what's missing, for what could go wrong. And opportunity mode, where it's open to possibility, to cultivation, to creative solution and abundance. And these aren't metaphors. These are literally different neurological states with different hormonal profiles and different perceptual filters. And what does this mean? It means that when you are in threat mode, your brain will literally filter out information that is not relevant to threat, meaning it's looking for problems, meaning it's not looking for solutions, and opportunities that are physically present in your environment will be invisible to you. Connections you can make, ideas you could execute, resources that are available. Your brain will not show them to you because it's too busy scanning for danger. But when you're in a state of genuine gratitude, not making a list, but the genuine felt experience of thankfulness for something specific is one of the fastest ways to shift out of threat mode. Not because it's a good habit, but because it's a neurological switch that God designed. And so most people who are struggling financially are in a chronic low-grade threat mode about money. They're always scanning for what's going wrong, what might run out, what could happen next. And the threat mode is filtering out the opportunities that would actually solve the problem. So when I tell you to pray with gratitude first, I'm not telling you to perform some checklist thankfulness before you get to the real prayer. I'm telling you that praying and having deliberate gratitude is going to switch your mental state before you ask for anything. Because what you can perceive, what ideas you can receive, what opportunities you can recognize is completely different from threat mode versus opportunity mode. And scripture got there first. In Philippians 4:6, it says, in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. It says with thanksgiving first, not as declaration, but thanksgiving literally is the switch that makes the receiving possible. Because so many of your answered prayers are hidden behind a heart of scarcity. And that scarcity's root is that you don't see that there is enough, that you can't see that you are living in an answered prayer right now. And when you recognize that, you will recognize God is a God who answers prayers. And so I want you to comment right now, practice this gratitude. What is an answered prayer that you are living in right now? Is it the child that you prayed for, the marriage that you're in? Is it the job that you had that when you interviewed, you wanted more than anything and now you're complaining about it? One of my favorite Christian rappers said, all my stressing comes from blessings. I can't even hate it. So let's practice that moment of gratitude right now in the comments. What answered prayer are you living in the God that answers prayers has given you? Now, method number 2 is surrender. And this method is one that was the single biggest unlock business breakthrough that I ever had. And I almost missed it because what I heard from God felt like the opposite of action. And so let me tell you what happened. So we were at a crossroads in our business, and everyone, coaches, mentors, people who had done this way longer than us, all said the same thing, that you have to do live webinars, live cohorts, live challenges, live converts better. Live is what works. And we've been doing live and it was working, but something about it was just not scalable and not matching to the particular wiring that I had and what I felt called to build. And I remember praying about it. And the question that came up while I was praying was, which outcome would you actually want if you could make either one work? Not which is safer, not which other people are doing, but which one matches with your wiring, with what you're praying for, and what you actually want. And the answer was clear. At the time, I wanted to be home with the children we were planning on having, and we wanted something that was passive and automated, and a course that could reach thousands of people without me having to be on a call for every single one or have my schedule dictated by a live webinar schedule. And what I heard was, prepare for the outcome that you want to happen. Work like the answer is yes, and trust God with the outcome. And so we surrendered the live model and we built the automated system. And that launch was our biggest launch ever. Bigger than any live webinar that we ever had done, more revenue than any time that we had ever sold coaching seats. And here's what I want you to understand about what that surrender actually did, not only spiritually, but neurologically, what surrender does for you. You see, your brain has a limited amount of cognitive bandwidth. And under every unresolved question, every open loop, every anxiety that you are carrying, you are consuming this bandwidth, that breathlessness, right? And so it's the question of whether we were making the right decision was an open loop. It was running in the background of every strategy session, every content decision, every business move that we made. And the moment of genuine surrender, not just saying the words, but actually releasing the outcome to God, closed that loop. And it freed up the cognitive resources that had been running that anxiety in the background. And what became possible in the space of that was what opened up a level of focused execution that wasn't available before. You see, Proverbs 3 verses 5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. He will direct your paths, but he cannot direct you if you're not moving. Because God is in control doesn't mean to do nothing. Because God is in control, it means that we can do something. And surrender isn't passivity. Surrender is the act of releasing the weight of the outcome so that your hands are free enough to do the work. And so comment the thing that you have yet to surrender, that you need to offload to God. Now, method 3 is specificity, okay? And this is something that most people get wrong, ironically, in a very specific way. And getting it wrong will cost you far more than you realize. Praying specifically, not because God needs the details, he already knows, of course, but because you need the details, okay? So let me tell you about the story of the 100-acre woods. And I'm not talking about Winnie the Pooh. I'm talking about what specific prayer, the fruit that it brung in the life of myself and my husband. Now, at the time, we were praying because we were wanting to have children and we were wanting to have a family compound. We wanted to have land, not just for ourselves, but for our children's children, where our grandchildren would be receiving land and homes as an inheritance, and that they would be able to start off on steps above where we came in at. And so during this, I loved, when I was growing up, Winnie the Pooh and the 100-acre woods. And so I had no idea how it was going to happen, but I was praying that within the budget that we wanted, we would be able to find land that was at least 100 acres. And so I prayed about this, and I prayed specifically asking the Lord for 100 acres in the specific budget range. And so we started looking, and we were looking, and at the time we couldn't get approved through a traditional lender because the business wasn't old enough yet for us to be able to get it. So we knew we were going to to have to do some sort of creative financing. And I was calling, right? I was looking on Zillow, I was looking and seeing, and there are so many pieces of land that I thought were going to be it that I called, and they just weren't interested. And so it was no after no after no, but I kept praying specifically. And you see, one of the differences that happens when you pray specifically is you look specifically, you work specifically. When I was on Zillow, I wasn't looking at pieces of land that were 50 acres or pieces of land that were 7 acres or 10 acres. At no point did I say, oh, well, no, maybe I should just lower it and we should look for something else. I was trusting for what I was specifically asking for. And then, you know what else we did? We started saving a down payment because we believed that the Lord was going to enable us to do this. And so we worked as if we knew that the answer was yes. And I said, if it's a no, that's the Lord's business. It's not my business. Okay. He didn't ask me to predict the future. I'm not a prophet. Okay. So he didn't ask me to predict the future. He didn't ask me to presume his will. He asked me to steward what we have well and to walk in faith. Right. And so we started saving for this down payment for this land that at that time we did not know existed until one day it did. Until one day there was a piece of land and it had a beautiful 1.5 acre lake. It had lined trees that went up the driveway, something I had always wanted. It was in a perfect location that wasn't too far from our church. And I called. And I talked to the man who owned the land, and he wasn't really interested in owner financing at the beginning. But as we talked to him a little bit more, he started to open up and kind of talk to us about the thing and why it was on the market and kind of what him and his wife were hoping for. And it was a family that only 2 families had ever owned the land. And it was all original hardwood and just all these amazing things. And so he said that he would invite my husband and I out to see the land and that we would talk more there. And we sat down at a picnic table that they had by the lake, and he shook hands and we made that deal. And he said, as long as all your finances come back well, then this is going to be your land. And it was that later that month that we closed on the land because we had the down payment already in hand that we were able to secure it. And literally there was somebody else who called the same week who was ready to make an offer, who had traditional financing. But because he liked us, because he loved what we were going to do with the land, because he would have loved to see us transform it into this family compound and the relationship, and they were also believers. And it was just such a providential thing where I knew God's handprints were all over it. But if we did not have that down payment saved, if we would have been walking around in doubt and in fear, like, why would I save for it when we don't even have any land yet? Why would I do? And that's the problem a lot of y'all have that y'all don't realize is you keep waiting for the evidence to start doing the work when the evidence comes after the work, when the evidence is a result of the work. And if you want to know more about that, go look at the video I did where I talk about the biblical time manipulation, because there is that suddenly that can happen where something that you think is going to take 10 years takes 10 months. And it has to do with if you are prepared the moment that opportunity comes knocking. And that's why specificity is so important, because it changes your ability to see the opportunity. And so we closed on that land, and you guys, it was not 100 acres. It was not 120 acres. It was not 150 acres. It was almost 200 acres of land, 196 acres that we were able to buy and own and plan for our family on. And we were able to do that, to see that opportunity, to prepare for it, because we prayed with specificity and we moved as if the answer is yes. And the reason why this is important is because here's what most people would have done instead. They would have prayed for land. They would have prayed for provision. They would have said, well, Lord, whatever you would have for me is what I want. And then when the traditional financing fell through, when the owner said no, when the timeline stretched, when all of these things, they would have said, well, these must be the closed doors. This must not be what you want me to do, Lord. But because I prayed specifically for over 100 acres, I prayed for owner financing. I prayed there would be water on the land. I prayed for that 100-acre wood. My husband, this is what I'm talking about moving in faith. My husband got me that sign that you see in the picture, the Pulu's 100-acre wood. He got it for my birthday just a few months before we ended up closing on the land, not even a year in between, because we were both walking in faith and we both had our eyes fixed on that specificity, that we knew that that's what we were working towards. And it doesn't mean that every time the answer is going to be yes, but the point is that we were going to work like it is. So my brain was not reading those no's as closed doors. It was reading them as not this one. Keep looking. The specific thing you prayed for is real and findable. And this is literally what neuroscience calls the reticular activating system. Y'all, God is so cool. It's literally a filter in your brain that decides what information is relevant enough to show you. And so when you pray specifically, you are programming that filter. You are telling your brain, these are the signals that matter. Show them to me. And you notice that the specificity specificity changed not just what I noticed, but it also changes what you do. We saved the money in advance because we were expecting to need a down payment. We made calls other people would have never made. We sat on that land at that lake and knew it was ours before we had signed anything. And so the specificity isn't just for God, it's for you. It's the act of deciding clearly enough that your brain can help you actually look for and find what you're looking for. I always tell people that delayed action or that hesitation is cancellation. That the second you hesitate, the second that you doubt, that you look to the left or the right, you signal to your brain that you're not committed. And commitment is freedom, because once you commit to something, that's literally how your brain works, where it views that commitment and says, oh, well, now that I know that we're doing it, now we're going to find ways to get it done. But we want the brain to figure it out before we commit. And that's just not how God designed it to be. And so here's what I have to tell you about all three of these methods, because I want to be honest with you. Okay, I'm never gonna lie. You can implement, at least as much as I can, right? So you can implement every single one of these. You can start praying with genuine gratitude that shifts your state to start seeing abundance and opportunity. You can practice surrender that frees your mind to be able to think about things you've never been able to. And you can pray with specificity that programs your vision and changes the action you take. And for some of you, for many of you, these methods will produce remarkable results. But for some of you, these methods will still keep hitting a ceiling. You'll start with the gratitude, and within 30 seconds, the threat mode pulls you back because your anxiety about money is deeper than a daily practice can reach. Or maybe you'll practice surrender and you'll feel the release for one day, but then you find yourself carrying the weight again. And maybe you pray specifically and the specificity feels hollow, like you're saying words, but you still don't actually believe God would answer for you specifically. And that isn't a faith problem. That's a thermostat problem. You see, we have a financial thermostat, and it's a subconscious set point that will determine what you believe that you're allowed to even ask for, to receive, and to keep, that's running underneath your prayer practice. And until it's reset, every single method is going to hit the ceiling, and you're going to feel like you're stuck on a loop, living the same life again and again. And that's what the free training in the description addresses. It goes over the 3 secrets to making money on autopilot, including the hidden force that has been controlling your financial thermostat since birth, and how you can reset it so that when you apply these prayer methods, that you can actually have them land in the way that they were designed for. And so many people who have been trying to get higher paying jobs but can't, who've been struggling with whatever their business, from coaching to catering to writing that book, whatever it is, this is the unlock that has enabled our clients to literally go from 0 to sold out in a single month, to be able to double their income in a matter of days, to be able to get a $20,000 commission when they had gotten none. And it's because when you transform that thermostat, everything else shifts, and all the methods you've been learning actually start to be able to be applied. And so the $50,000 a month didn't come from a better strategy. It came from a mind that was being transformed enough to implement the strategy. And we see this Romans 12:2. It says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And you see, these prayer methods and what I teach in that free training are the mechanism of that renewal. The gratitude switches the brain from threat to opportunity so you can see what's available. That surrender is going to clear the bandwidth so you can move without the weight of outcomes that you were never supposed to carry. And specificity programs your filter so your brain will start finding whatever you declare as findable. And when all three are working together on the same thing, that is a mind that produces the actions that produce the outcome. So comment below either the thing that you need that gratitude for, that answered prayer, or comment what is the thing that you need to surrender. And let me know in the comments. Go ahead and check out that free training if you're ready to see what your financial thermostat is and get past it so that you can unlock everything that's on the other side of abundance. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.